would have failed at that point. But I think that they're, the way that they did last year, and, there have been times in the past where the Indians have been in the situation and they've been tripped up by teams that were lousy. Teams like Tampa Bay when they were lousy. We'd be, trying to challenge for a postseason spot, and we lose to some real loser teams. But last year, we showed that we just stomped all over those teams, which is what a really good team is supposed to do. And hopefully, they'll have that same mindset under manager Terry Francona to be able to do it again.
I agree with you, and it starts out with in my opinion, the toughest of the teams, even though record-wise it might not seem that way. Minnesota, they always play tough. Gardy's always got those guys ready to play, especially against the Indians, and they're kicking things off by throwing Kyle Gibson out there. He's won both of his starts against the Indians already this season, so he's shown that he can handle the Indians. 2-13, Michael Brantley and Carlos Santana against Gibson so far this season. Those are the Indians' top 2 run producers, so it's going to be important for them to get to him. He did have a tough last couple of appearances. His last 8 1/3 innings at home, which is actually 2 starts that he started, he's given up 12 runs in that period there. So he definitely had a rough stretch there, but his last appearance last week against Houston, 1 run, almost 8 innings. So, he's been up and down. He's 11-9, 4 ERA for the season, but he's done well against the Indians. So the Tribe, first night out, is going to have to go out there and get to him, and Trevor Bauer is going to be the guy to go out there and do it for the Indians. Can the Tribe, second time through the rotation here, continue that great run that we talked about a little bit yesterday that they've had through the last 6 runs through the rotation? 46 strikeouts, only 6 walks, and basically a 1 flat ERA the last 6 appearances by these starters. Bauer started all that. Now it's coming back around to him. He's going to have to continue to show some of that growth so that they can start off with a win. So they kind of got their back against it here to kick off the series.
That's right, and I think that tonight's game is really the most important because, like you said, Gibson's very tough on the Indians, and he's one of their best overall pitchers. And if you can get to him, and if Bauer can come up with another strong start like he did against Arizona, then you really start to put the pressure on them. And you've got the next game on Wednesday with TJ House going against Ricky Nolasco. Now, Nolasco has been terrible for the Twins. He's got like a 6 ERA. So there's a good chance that we could really jump on him tomorrow. So if the Indians can somehow get through today, then they could be in a good position to win this series, because then you got Kluber going up on Thursday against Phil Hughes. Hughes has been really good for the Twins. He's never really seized the opportunity that he had with the Yang and trying to make Phil Hughes the next big thing, and it just wasn't happening. So, but once he maybe it's just a change of scenery for him. He's been really good. His ERA is even lower than tonight's starter for the Twins. So it looks like tonight's really going to be the big night in order for the Indians to get those bats finally going.
And I agree with you there, and it's key, as you said there too. Plus, knowing that you've got Kluber at the back end of this thing, it would be good, psychologically good in general, to take that first one. You've got then you really set your stage to hopefully make some hay here in, I have no idea why, but in the back of my mind, I just chuckled. When I just said make some hay, I don't know why. It must be the Colt McCoy talk. The phrase "put the hay in the barn" just popped into my head when I said that, because that was his remember his little expression, his euphemism for training camp, that was putting the hay in the barn. I don't know where that came from. It must be the Colt McCoy appearance last night, Colt McCoy sighting.
Yeah.
But anyways, and I agree with you, though. It's a chance for them to know that, knowing that he's coming on the back end of that, and you got to get it rolling here, because to me, this is the trickiest of the series here in Minnesota. And like you said, it's so interesting to people that look for those things. I mean, you don't even realize it, but then you hear, Jeff, you point out that those are the same teams that the Indians made that run on at the end of the thing there. And you look, and guess what? It's a steady diet of these teams throughout the rest of it. I mean, pretty much the teams that we're playing here, that's it. You add Detroit and Kansas City, that's the rest of the Indians season is Minnesota, Houston, Chicago, Detroit, and Kansas City. That's the rest of the season minus one game with the Angels and the final series against Tampa Bay. That's it. It's all those teams. It's the division pretty much the rest of the way through. You've got Minnesota, Houston, White Sox, Kansas City, Detroit, White Sox, Minnesota, Detroit, Houston, Minnesota, Kansas City, Tampa Bay. I mean, that's the slate of series lining up the rest of the season. So it's set up much like the end of last season. But now they had to go out and do it then. You have to go out and do it now. They sit the same number of games back. Actually, I think this time last year they may have been 6 or 8 games above 500. They were starting to climb above that mark there, but other than that, the same number of games out of the playoffs, out of the wild card, and all of that.
Yeah.
At this exact same time last year. So as much as Mike loves to text me and get me on the air and go, well, it's not last year, but doggone it, man, it's setting up that way. And then looking ahead, not that you want to get past Minnesota, but you come back home for that small 3-game series against Houston where it's going to be Carrasco, Salazar, and Bauer going out there. Then you head back out on the road for 6 with Chicago and Kansas City to end the month. So that's kind of weird, that Houston series just kind of buried in there at home. Just a 3 standalone there before you head right back out there. So the downside, I guess, of this run to end the month is that 9 of your last 12 are on the road, where the Indians are obviously not as good. We've got the 4th best record in baseball at home, but that script flips when you start to get to the month of September, because they kick off the month of September with, what do they got? 4, 7, 11, first 11 are at home to start the month of September. They don't have a road game until September 12th, and then they also finish with 6 in a row at home. So it's all there for them. It's all, and that's why I say the next 9 will tell us, you and me and everybody listening, if it's there for the taking or not, because it is. It's just, are they going to go out and get it, man? And it starts with Minnesota.
Yeah, and it is kind of amazing that the way this season has gone, how unspectacular it's been, how we've been waiting for them to get hot, and they really haven't. They've managed to stay afloat. They're actually above 500, and as you mentioned, they're the same distance out of a wild card spot as they were at this exact same time last year. So even though you look at the team, it's like this doesn't really look like a playoff team. It doesn't look like they've got that stuff. But you know what? It could happen. It could just as easily happened this year as it happened last year. And the thing that really helps is how bad the Tigers have got. They've lost the lead to the Royals, and you have a situation where those two teams and the Indians could all end up possibly beating each other up and get to a point where when we come down toward the end of the season, they could be battling for possibly the division lead and a wild card. They could be 3 teams battling for 2 playoff spots down the road if everything works out right. It's just that the Indians have to put themselves in a position in these next 9 games to get close, so that when they're playing the Tigers and the Royals, that they can feel the Indians breathing down their necks and put that playoff-style pressure on them.
Absolutely, because they have been on a run. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 2 in a row here. Kansas City really flipped the script in the division. Like Dan said yesterday, they kind of made the move that the Indians needed to make there. But I'm going to go back to spring training. It's playing out the way I said, man. Like I said, I don't get them all right, but I do remind you of the ones that I do. And I said, man, these 3 teams, Detroit, Cleveland, Kansas City, I said, this division, the American League Central, is going to come down at the end of the season. Forget the records against every other team. It's going to come down to the games against themselves. This division is going to cannibalize itself until there's one team standing, and it's whoever wins the most head-to-head games. And that is exactly the way this thing is going to play itself out. It's going to be it's going to be a very interesting run here down the stretch. But again, to me, I can't get excited. I can't get hyped up for Kansas City and Detroit until I see how we do with Minnesota and Chicago and Houston.
That's right. Hopefully the Indians will have something to some good momentum, just like this weekend, winning 2 out of 3 from Baltimore. As great as Baltimore's been, that was really big to turn in those great pitching performances and squeak out 2 of those 3 victories. What's really going to happen is, I have confidence in the starting pitching. Not that they're going to be as lights out as they were this last time through the rotation, but I think the starting pitching is going to hold up and be very good and very competitive. not just with Kluber, but also with Bauer and Salazar and them. But what has to happen is this offense has to get it together, and it can't just be two guys. It's got to be 5 or 6 guys getting hot at the same time. And that's what we thought this team was going to be all year long. Oh, look at all these hitters up and down the lineup. They're going to be slump proof. Even if 1 or 2 guys isn't hitting, the rest will. No, it's been the exact opposite. There's been only 1 or 2 guys hitting, and everybody else has been in a slump or injured or whatever. So hopefully we can get Michael Bourne going at the top. We can get Kipnis going, as he's had a rather lackluster season at the plate. And, the guys who have been reliable, guys like Jan Gomes and guys like Michael Brantley, could keep it going. And it would really be nice if Chisenhall could get hot again like he did earlier in the season. That would really come in handy if you go on one of his big streaks.
Brother, speaking of Chisenhall, just go to show you how incredible his first half of the season was, because he's hitting, I want to say, like $180 since his high point of the season, and he's still just around 300. He's at like 290, 289. I mean, and he has not hit anything in 2 months, and he is still one of the top hitters, man. I mean, it's just amazing, because it shows the length and the tediousness of a baseball season, and how it truly is not subject to the ups and downs of the individual, which is what makes a baseball season so funny, because it is the ups and downs of the individual games and weeks, yet the seasons are judged on averages. But that's so foolhardy, and that's one of the places where I do gain an appreciation for some of the new metrics. I don't get into all of them, some of that stuff drives me crazy, but I get an appreciation for it, because just like Chisenhall, like if you get the baseball card at the end of the season and you go, man, this guy hit 290, not bad, man. I want this guy on my team, but he hit 400 when it didn't really matter, and the team was floating up and down in the beginning part of the season, and then you hit 200 or less when we needed you the most, but the average doesn't show you that, because at the end of the day, he hit 1 out of every 3 pitches, but that's not the truth. And so, that's one of the things that fool you about that fool's gold of the statistic of a whole season, when really, I mean, it doesn't matter. You can hit 300 the whole season. To me, if you go 0 for the 1 week that we need you to come through at the end of the season, what good was your 300 all season? Because the 1 week we needed you to hit a ball, you couldn't touch anything. And I don't mean Chisenhall. I just mean like for a guy like that goes cold at money time. So that's one of the things about the average, that you really have to. You have to almost follow the ups and downs to see, where a guy really did help the team out.
You're right. That's a very good point. And another person that would apply to is Carlos Santana. I mean, Santana has pumped himself up so well. And, like I said before, he's already up to 20 home runs.
21.
He could end the season with a very nice-looking stat line, whereas his first entire half of the season, he was just doing awful. And he was, his lack of offensive production led the Indians to lose some of those games that, we could certainly love to have back right now. So even if he puts up an impressive line over the season, there's several games which he wasn't doing the job, and then a few later that he was. But obviously you want somebody who's going to hit not only for a good average, but also spread that out over the season, so he's helping you each and every day and giving you the best chance to win.
I disagree with you on Santana simply because now maybe I've talked to you about this. I agree that he shouldn't have been in the middle of the lineup maybe with his batting average, but look at the rest of the team, because I'm sitting here looking at them. There's nobody even close to being 150 points higher on their on-base percentage than their batting average like Carlos Santana is. Now, I know the first thing you're going to say is I don't need my cleanup hitter to get on base. That's true. That I can give you, the where you placed him in the lineup. But there's a spot every day for Carlos Santana for me, as far as I'm concerned, because of that statistic there, but that being said, I see Bruce in the chat room. My on-base percentage to me is definitely one of the ones. Runners in scoring position as well. I mean, it doesn't do me any good if you're the king of, just like the Indians. If you score 10 runs in one game and none in the next 2, it looks like you averaged 3.5 a game. No, we didn't. We scored 10, 0, and 0. So same thing with a guy that piles up RBIs in meaningless situations. To me, obviously, the one you worry about is the guys that come through at money time, the ones that come through when it counts with the runners in scoring position, and as you see, Mike Avila's been, I think, the worst in the history of the Cleveland Indians franchise at that this season.